Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what Scott has. Mine's Austin. Oh, the Lithuanian stuff. Oh, yeah. Okay, I'd like to call the Town of Rochester Town Board special meeting to order. So we can stand. Okay. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Right?
Councilman Ciari.
Here.
Councilman Coleman.
Here.
Councilman Dindal.
Here.
Councilman Sneeson.
Here.
Supervisor Now.
Here. All right, this is the first time we've had a 5-member board present. I think since March. Right? Yeah, so that's exciting. So I'm glad to have everyone here. We did already welcome Renee, our new member, but I will welcome her again with a full board. So this is a special meeting that we scheduled last Thursday after a very long public hearing, because we wanted to carve out some special time to go ahead and review and discuss the local laws that we had the public hearings on, and to do the SEQRA determinations for those. So just for the public to know that, we held our public hearings open until 3:30 today for written comment. So that is now, I guess, closed. So there won't be any more, there's not a public hearing portion of this meeting. So with that, their first item on our agenda is the acceptance of the agenda. Do I have a motion?
I'll make that motion.
Second. Any discussion? Actually, I do need to make an amendment. I would like to insert a executive session for the purposes of discussions of the appointment of particular persons after our discussion items. So, I'm sorry.
I'll make that motion as amended.
I'll second. Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Okay, the motion carries. So the way I thought we should do this is just go ahead and do the seeker determination for the local laws. That's just part of the process for the legislative acts. And so I thought we could just start with that, and then we will actually go into our discussion of the local laws. So the first thing we need to do though is type the laws, because I do not think that we did that. So I didn't have that drafted, so let me see. I think all we have to do is, I'd like to make a motion to classify the local laws G, H, and I as type 1 under seeker.
Second.
Oh. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstain. Oh, do we have to roll call for that? Okay. So then the next, so we did, this all was drafted for us. We have a draft full EAF, and then we have a draft resolution that I circulated to the board. So I thought what we could do is what we usually do is, and I sent those on last week, and then I sent them again on Sunday. So I only have one printed copy, but they should be in an email from Sunday where I sent the agenda out. And I thought what we normally do is we go through the EAF together, so, the part 2 together. So do you guys want to just do that like we normally do, and then we can,
I'm fine with that. I don't think that Emily or Renee have had to do a senior yet, but I haven't done one before. I'm okay with going through the normal, just answering questions.
Yeah, yeah.
as a group.
Yeah, it's, this is pretty, because it's a
That's all.
legislative act. Yeah,
And would say if it's yes or no, unless we say yes, and then it triggers another series of questions for us to answer. So then we'll go through those if any of us think yes.
Yeah.
Then
so that's, so the resolution after we do that, is second, and then so there's the, EAF part 2 is what I'm looking at. And that's page 1 of 10. So that one is, basically, we just go through and we, answer the questions for the, potential project impacts. So there's the impact on land. The proposed action may involve construction on or physical alteration of the land surface of a proposed. And remember, the proposed action is just the passage of a law, not anything that is happening because of the law. So we had our consultant do a draft for this, and the recommendation is no, which I agree. So then we don't have to answer any other questions. 2, impact on geological features, no. 3, impacts on surface water. The proposed action may affect one or more wetlands or other surface water bodies. No. Impact on groundwater. The proposed action may result in new or additional use of groundwater, or may have the potential to introduce contaminants to groundwater or an aquifer. No. Impact on flooding. The proposed action may result in development on land subject to flooding. No. Impacts on air. The proposed action may include a state-regulated air emission source. No. Impact on plants and animals. The proposed action may result in a loss of flora or fauna. No. Impact on agricultural resources. The proposed action may impact agricultural resources. No. Impact on aesthetic resources. The land use of the proposed action are obviously different from or are in sharp contrast to current land use patterns between the proposed project and a scenic or aesthetic resource. No. Impact on historic and archaeological resources. So on this one, the proposed action may occur in or adjacent to historic or archaeological resource, and that one is yes. So that's because of our districts. So going through that one, we would be determining if it's a small or moderate to large impact.
What do you mean because of our district? Why because of our district?
Well, I think the argument here is that it could occur with the adoption of the plan. There's the historic districts that we have.
What could occur?
The proposed action. We can talk about it.
Okay. I'm just wondering why that one's a yes. There's others that weren't. Nobody else. I'm wondering why that one's a yes. I mean, who knows?
We have.
Been a while since I've seen that.
I think it's saying if we look at the
Can you read it one more time, Erin?
well, the questions, impact on historic and archaeological resources. the proposed action may occur in or adjacent to a historic or archaeological resource.
Okay, so yeah, I think yes,
Because
technically,
we
because
purchased
of this,
I don't know.
this. I guess the historic district would be within this, so it could affect it. I think it's a stretch to say yes
I feel
at
like
the end of the day.
we might need to just change that one.
I think that we should change it to no. I think this is a stretch. I could kind of see technically where it's coming from, since it's the historic district and this. The law in place could potentially impact it. I'm focusing on impact being the word in the question. Whether that's positive or negative, it could impact it, is what I'm thinking from this law, but. That's
They don't
how the
tell
law
us
is
why.
used, not.
Well, it would
Actual
be,
legislation.
we would use the part one of the EAF, which I didn't print out for myself. Yeah.
Which letter aligns to it?
Each, part one, E3, E, F, and G. Okay. Would be
I mean,
designated public resources on or near project site.
Well, okay, so I guess the question is our historic district listed on the national or state registry of historic places?
Are you asking if we had that?
If we're registered on that, if our historic district is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah,
Yeah, okay.
so I think that's why.
So, with 2 districts, and then we also have property like our museum, schoolhouse is listed on
Is listed.
national.
So does the project site contain or is it substantially contiguous to a
I guess what I'm wondering is we're not talking about project site. There's no second question.
I mean, I think it's that the properties are identified in the plan and that's H. But the other questions don't have this same language.
Yeah, but being identified in the plan doesn't imply that there's an impact unless there were an offer made and. Like,
Yeah,
wouldn't there be a local law to make a purchase of properties under this plan anyway? And then that, I think, would be
Yeah.
relevant, like that might be a yes. But then also farmland impacts to farmland potentially could be, but that's just why I'm wondering.
I mean, I
We can
guess,
go through it and see.
is the project site or any portion of it located in or adjacent to an area designated as sensitive for archaeological sites on the New York State Historic Preservation Office archaeological site? I mean, I guess I'm comfortable.
We can go through it if it's just, if it's moderate, it's not.
I mean, they're all,
Moderate.
they would all be no or small. Yeah.
We can leave it.
Yeah, I think if we want to leave it, I'm fine with leaving it, all of it. No, the small.
Yeah.
Impact. But it seems to mostly act when you look in in that section of it for the questions. It keeps saying site, project site. So that's why I'm like, the project site's the whole town, it's not specifically there.
Yeah.
I think well, then that brings back to your question as to why land uses would be involved.
Yeah. Yeah, just.
I mean, if it's for this plan.
I think it's every other question is clearly a no, whereas these are, the impact, the way it's worded is it may occur in I guess I can understand why the answer was yes, but there's no impact because the proposed action is the adoption of a plan that lists the historic and archaeological resources, where the other questions aren't about that. So I could see why his recommendation is to say yes, but with no impact.
Yeah, I guess we've done that on other speakers before where we've said yes, and then every answer was pretty much no to small impact, just technically, but then not in the parameters of the question.
So I think I would like to just keep it as is, but say no impact. And then on the D, there's no other impacts. And then on E, you're supposed to fill out E of that if there is a moderate impact. But
I'm comfortable with that also.
Then 11, impact on open space and recreation. The proposed action may result in the loss of recreational opportunities or reduction of open space resource as designated in any adopted municipal open space plan. No. Impact on critical environmental areas. The proposed action may be located within or adjacent to a critical environmental area. No. We don't have any of those. Impact on transportation, the proposed action may result in a change to existing transportation systems. No. Impact on energy, the proposed action may cause an increase in the use of any form of energy. No. Impact on noise, odor, and light, the proposed action may result in an increase in noise, odors, or outdoor lighting. No. Impact on human health. The proposed action may have an impact on human health from exposure to new or existing sources of contaminants. No. These last two are always the most confusing. Consistency with community plans. Proposed action is not consistent with adopted land use plans. No. And then consistency with community character, the proposed project is inconsistent with the existing community character. No. Okay. So, does everyone agree? So I think that means then that, we have a draft resolution for the neg deck. So I can just, I'll go ahead and read that. So whereas the town board of the town of Rochester is considering establishment of a community preservation fund by adoption of proposed local law G of 2024 entitled a local law establishing a community preservation fund and creating a community preservation advisory board as authorized by general municipal law 6S for the purpose of preserving natural, scenic, historic, and open space resources within the town, and adoption of proposed local law H of 2024 entitled a local law adopting a community preservation plan for the purpose of preserving natural, scenic, historic, and open space resources within the town, and adoption of proposed local law number I of 2024 entitled a local law imposing a 1.5% real estate transfer tax on the conveyance of interests in real property in the town, with the revenues derived from this tax to be deposited in the town of Rochester Community Preservation Fund for the purpose of preserving natural, scenic, historic, and open space resources for the preservation of community character within the town. The proposed local laws in the forms on file with the town clerk, and Whereas on July 16th, 2024, the town board classifies the proposal for law as type 1 actions under SEQRA, and declared, we did do that. And on June 13th, 2024, declared itself lead agency in a review of proposal for laws as it is the only involved agency. And whereas the proposal for laws will be applicable throughout the town. And whereas the town board has prepared a full environmental assessment form for the proposal for laws, and whereas the town board has considered the criteria contained in 6 NYCRR 617.7 and thoroughly analyzed all identified relevant areas of environmental concern disclosed in the full EAF, and whereas the town board has reviewed parts 2 and 3 of the full EAF, setting forth reasons supporting a determination that the proposed actions will not have a significant adverse impact on the environment. Now therefore be it resolved that the town board of the town of Rochester, Ulster County, New York, hereby adopts a negative declaration and determines the adoption of the proposed local laws will not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts, and that a draft environmental impact statement will not be prepared, and authorizes and directs the town clerk to distribute a copy of this resolution to the town supervisor, file a notice of adoption of a negative declaration for a type 1 action for publication with the New York State Environmental Notice Bulletin, and to any person that has requested a copy, and to make all other filings required by law.
Are you making
I'll make that motion.
second?
Any discussion? Okay, that's a roll call vote.
Councilman Ciardi.
Aye.
Councilman Coleman.
Aye.
Councilman Dindal.
Aye.
Councilman Sneeson.
Aye.
Supervisor.
Okay, so we have just made our secret determination, and that is our second item on the agenda. Alright. So I would like to, this is the, I would like to acknowledge and state that this is the first time that the town board is actually discussing these laws all together, particularly with, you know, I wanted to be able to make sure that we did this given the, you know, very involved public turnout at our hearings. I think we should address questions and comments, and also, you know, have a conversation about the laws and the issues that came up. And so that's really the purpose of this meeting. I am hoping to cap our meeting at a 2-hour total, so I'd like to be able to adjourn tonight, including the executive session by 8:30, but I also don't want to cut off any like time that we have, you know, that we want to be able to discuss. And then just in terms of like setting out, we have 3 local laws, so that's why on the agenda I split them out separately. I thought it would probably be good to talk about each one of them separately. We can have a general sort of like discussion ahead of that if you would like. In terms of timeline, so the Community Preservation Plan Committee and Ted Fink, the consultant that worked on creating the plan document that is part of Local Law H. And, you know, originally when we set out, when the town board in its iteration that we had originally set out to begin this process, we were discussing getting, you know, having this be on the November ballot to put it up for referendum so the voters could decide on this. So just in terms of like, we can definitely discuss that timeline, but just to set that timeline for the board ahead of our discussion, the law that would be on the ballot would be local law I. So that's the one, and all the local law G and H have to get adopted. Local, and then before local law I can be adopted, but local law I is the law that's actually on the ballot, is the real estate transfer tax. One of the reasons why I scheduled this meeting for tonight is if the board, if we are discussing and we do decide we want to consider and moving forward with adopting any of these local laws and say we wanted to edit them, we could only do minor edits at this point. And we would have to make those edits and then have those versions of the laws in the hands of the town board 8 days before voting. And so that would, if that's what happens tonight, then we would be voting at our audit meeting, which was our original, the plan, this timeline that we had. When we scheduled this meeting, that we were discussing voting at the audit meeting. So I was not intending on myself, I did not put those resolutions on the agenda. That's why I didn't put them on the agenda, because that's what we had discussed, is wanting to have a discussion as a board. So I'm just, this is what we discussed at our last meeting, and I'm trying to just kind of catch everyone up and set the tone for the discussion. Obviously, you as a body, we make those decisions, and you all have the ability to, make motions and try to and make decisions for how you think things should go. But I thought having a discussion first would be good. So, do you guys want to go law by law, or should we open up with just like a popcorn of
Like whole picture.
I think we can do big picture.
Yeah, because they're all, it's all.
Okay, so I think then just in terms of, I still would like to go through each law, but I think if we wanted to, I'd like to maybe do in our organizational meeting, we adopt a procedure for how we operate our meetings. And one of the things that we haven't really been doing, that hasn't really been an issue, is like going around and every board member having a chance to speak first and then going around again if we need to. So I thought we could do that for this. So I wanted to just kind of go around and have each board member have a time to sort of give where you're at. So.
Sorry, I just want to finish reading Mary Lou's comments. 'Cause
Oh,
I didn't
sure,
get
yeah.
to back before I say my comment.
Oh, yeah, I circulated
And,
something, yeah, I didn't get circulated to the whole board.
Yeah, I think it's,
Okay,
I'm almost done.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
I
ahead.
just wanted some of my questions.
Was that new today?
there's something, I sent some emails today, and then I printed out things that that I was working on them until I came over here. So those were questions between Mary Lou and board members that. Yes. I also, if you guys, just for your knowledge, in your pockets, and this, this could come up when we are discussing, if we are discussing local law I have a spreadsheet that I circulated, but I also printed out copies for you. That is some anecdotal sales data. It's sales data from the assessor's office from this year and all of 2023 is what I printed out. Of all sales of parcels of single family dwellings, what the sale price was and what the amount over the exemption amount would be. And then I have two different like tax percentages in there just for the board to look at, because I think that was something that came up a lot in discussion. So that's also in.
And Aaron, can you give me the number that triggers the median number, the value?
So just for the board, that is a subjective. That's a not subjective. That's not that would be determined if the law passes based on the 3 years prior median sale price of the town of Rochester. So what is being used right now is in this spreadsheet is I have to actually. What's being used in this spreadsheet is 447,000. And so that's based on data from the assessor's office, but that would not wouldn't be the
Necessarily
number.
be that, yeah, it's not a definite
Yeah,
number
that's
that
just
we can set.
what we're
We can only
using
set it.
based on current times as an illustrative. Yeah, and then I also have this, I only have one copy of it. Our assessor gave this to me. This is sales statistics by MLS. So this is sales information for the past year. So from July 1st, 2023 to July 9th, 2024 for residential property sales. And it's pretty interesting. Town of Rochester. And again, this is not the number, but this is the median price for the past year is $505,000.
I'm happy to share my thoughts.
Okay, great.
I was so pleased with how engaged everyone was. Like, I think that we had really good turnouts. I really liked hearing from everyone. I think that people brought up really valid concerns that our committee members then worked really hard to address. And I feel like I'm in a better place because hearing a lot of what came off as potentially opinions that may have been, they were seemingly adversarial to each other, but once we heard more context of where people were coming from, I think that everyone's concerns are a lot more aligned than I felt like at the very beginning. And a lot of the concerns can be assuaged by more information and were maybe due to a lack of really good communication at the outset. I feel like there were people who were asking us to either delay or vote no because of housing concerns, an increase in tax rates, or an increase in housing prices, and people who were asking us to expedite or vote yes with similar concerns about rising housing prices from unsustainable development coming in if we don't do something like this, and asking us to be more intentional about soliciting input from people who stand to be more impacted than others, such as farmers and people on the housing committee. And I think that all of these things can be done. I'm compelled to have us move forward putting this on the ballot. And between now and then, focus on soliciting that input from more impacted community members with experience and expertise, and using that information to help inform like who the committee members are. It goes to a ballot and there's a vote. And so if it passes, we can be working between now and when there's a vote to figure out who's going to be on this potential committee, what the criteria they'll look at in recommending parcels be, and really answering a lot more questions so that people can make a really informed vote. But I don't see any reason not to at least let people vote. And yeah, I feel like that is a way to, feels to me like that's benefits then everyone's input in a way. So that's where I'm at for now.
Do you want to just go around the table?
No, let's do volleyball rotation.
Popcorn.
Sure.
Okay.
I unfortunately do not share the same opinions as Councilwoman Dindile after the public hearing. I left here feeling our town was more divided than ever on a topic that I frankly feel should not be our priority with how much other items are on this town board's plate right now. You said we have to inform people and take the time to sit there and do information sessions and make sure people understand that. This is a lot of information to swallow while we're also doing we're ending a multi-year process on our zoning code and the zoning map. And trying to make everyone in town be on the same page and make sure that we are communicating well with that, because there have been errors with it. There's been errors already from communicating this from the start with the community, and with our different committees that should have, commented, and that's not on anyone in particular. That's, just we should have been better about forwarding it as a board for comment to our advisory committees. But I think we have far too much on our plate to sign up for any more. Like Aaron said at the beginning of the meeting, this is the first meeting since March that all 5 of us have been here at the same time. I think it's clear that this board is busy out with our lives outside of here. So I think to sign us up for something else that's as important as this, and I'm strictly talking just the idea of putting this law to the ballot right now. For my comments that I'm saying now, I have something else to be said about the actual response and how I feel about this law post-public hearing. But for me, I don't think that this isn't a useful tool to potentially be used and utilized by the town. I do, however, don't agree that it should be pushed through without us making sure that this is exactly what's right for our community in its current stance right now. With that being said about the actual idea of this, just trying to push it through to the tier. The actual idea behind this fund, while yes, it can be used as some tools, one of the things that resonated with me most during public comment was there was a young man who I think is here tonight, that's of similar age to me, and I'm guessing in my generation, that stood up after someone had said, no one in this room will pay this tax, and said, I rent my house right now, and if I want to buy a home here, because of how high the median house prices are, I will have to pay this tax. If I want to sell my home, which is currently valued above this median price, as someone from the lower middle class in this town, I would not only be subjected to, if I wanted to apply this to my own house, but if I wanted to buy a house of equal value, I am now going to have to potentially pay this transfer tax for staying in my same town, which to me does not seem fair to the residents of this town. We already have a huge issue with trying to keep generational families in town, and being able to let younger generations afford houses and buy houses here. So this seems right now for me in the current climate, like nothing more than a deterrent of really what our goal is of keeping our generations in this town and making it so that people can afford to live here and people want to stay here. I understand that this will also do that, but this doesn't feel like the right way when we have no housing available for people in our town to live. That's long, and I'm not talking affordable housing, just to clarify for the public, since some people want to say I only say affordable. I'm talking any form of long-term housing. It doesn't matter about if someone's purchasing it, if someone's renting it long-term, it's any form of housing. It is difficult to find any form of housing that people under the median income level can afford in this area. So I think that this law does nothing but make that problem worse for the people that I feel I represent in this town. So that's my piece on it.
Now you have to popcorn someone.
Zigzag, Michael, reverse it over.
That's a lot to follow.
Yeah, I'm sorry, that's why I was trying to.
I'm neutral at this point on whether or not to move this forward to referendum. And it's not because I disagree with the value of CPP. I actually support this as a tool to give the town the option to have more, what's the word? Precise ways of protecting things that we've said in previous documents that are relevant. I'm thinking of Jerry Fernino's comments in the public hearing, and he kind of tied this to the zoning work that's been done. Which I think if this is rushed, we've done a good job. I'm not saying it's rushed, but people have raised the concerns that this is being rushed. We've done a good job from a zoning perspective, taking our time, soliciting feedback from the public. I mean, he commented those letters went out last year, and we still have been working and discussing this. And in fact, we've made a lot of changes and reversed some of the recommendations based off that public feedback. So I think we're doing a good job of that. Yeah, Aaron's brought this up to me in the past. I mean, zoning is a pretty blunt instrument, right? It's saying, we are going to say all of these parcels are 10 acres and you can't subdivide them. You can do this, but you can't do that. And you can build this, but you can't build that. It's very hard to use that tool to manage development in a way that is going to make sense and value the things that we talked about, value from housing to open space to farmland, etc. This tool, on the other hand, gives the town a very specific way to go in and say, this property is valuable for these reasons, and we want to protect it because of X, Y, and Z. And it's not just this board, it's future boards. So I think that's an important thing to empower people to have, just because, I mean, if not the board, then we have no say. We have no control over who buys property in town. And if a 500-acre parcel comes up and the developer wants to buy it and put $50 million homes, as long as that fits within our zoning code, then we can't do that. And that's not going to provide affordable housing. They're going to build what they want to build. So this at least provides us an option where if a piece of prime farmland comes up and there's a bid for it, as a board or as a future board, they can say, you know what, this is too important for it to turn into a bunch of houses. So I think principally supporting the CPP, like I'm on board with supporting the CPP, and I think we should have that in place. And we can talk about, you know, how we actually shape the language. We can talk about what we want to use as where that tax cuts in. But I do think that it's valuable to look at homes that are above a certain level and say, you know what, you're going to contribute something into a community fund. It's not going to be a huge amount of money if you're already buying a house that's worth X amount. And that can be used for something that I think is valuable for the larger. Charlotte, I'm very sympathetic with the arguments you were making previously about, you know, the legislation that's not passed yet, but currently available for housing. And the one thing, you know, in reading through the plan that does kind of stick in my craw a little bit is there's a lot of emphasis on maintaining and increasing property values. And you're exactly right. Property values go up. You know, families that are trying to buy starter homes are trying to buy more expensive properties. It's great for people that own properties. It's not great for people that stay in town and buy homes. So I'm much more inclined to emphasize things like preserving a farmland, which we know, I mean, we did our whole mapping process and we know this town has a huge amount of really great soils in it, and we're lucky for that. So I think looking at doing that, I think selectively preserving open spaces is important, but we also happen to be surrounded by two very huge open spaces. Like if you look at the town right now, we're very well protected on the north and south in terms of open space. So I think if we want to take a look at the plan, and it's a phenomenal plan and it's a ton of work and people work really hard on it. If we want to take some of the recommendations and put it to some of our committees, if we want to look at making adjustments to that plan, I'm certainly persuadable to that argument. I do think long-term, I would support putting this up for referendum, but I'm also willing to hear arguments in favor of delaying that. possibly doing that next year. So. And I can go to Aaron.
So I definitely know that this plan was driven by passion and the committee put a lot of effort and time and work into it. I do strongly feel that it would be a very valuable plan for our community because our community is going to be changing rapidly, quickly. However, I feel very empathetic to your point because I tend to have my agriculture blinders on and I wasn't aware of, the housing aspect of it. And I think that's a really important thing.
Can you speak up a little bit, Renee?
I'm kind of a low talker, I'm sorry.
Oh, okay. It's fine.
No, I was just saying I respect Charlotte's opinion of the, locals and trying to start a new home with a family and having to purchase. With that being said, I do also feel like there wasn't a lot of language in there supporting ag land. I think in like the 106 pages, there were only like 2 sentences about farmland, which I don't think is done maliciously. I think it was just an oversight, and I would like to see our ag advisory committee involved.
Correct.
There's Chatham has a CPP, and they have a farmland protection program that goes along with it. I just would like to keep the food security in locally, and I think it should go more towards preserving farmland and maybe not so much a focus of parks and trails. However, that being said, I think it's a necessity for this community, but I think it needs a little bit of tweaking and some input from all of our specialty committees. For this one.
I guess it's my turn now. So I think I want to say that I feel like this is a really good test for a new supervisor working through this. I want to say that I am like I'm very torn because similar to Renee, I actually do believe this is a great tool. I actually brought this tool up like 4 years ago, I think at a few workshop meetings because I had heard about it and other towns had started the process and had said, this process takes time and it's a 2-year process. So I had kept bringing it up like, hey, maybe we should get this started because I think that this is a valuable tool. And I come from, I came onto the town board after being on the zoning board of appeals and really sensitive to development and being a farmer and really wanting to have ways that the town itself could actually take action that wasn't simply through zoning. And one of the things that came up in our public hearings for the zoning changes and the mapping changes was like, what an incredible impact zoning can have. And if you know about the history of zoning, the whole point of zoning is to keep things from happening. Now there are more creative ways of using zoning and doing incentive zoning and encouraging things through zoning. But it also is a tool that can be used to restrict. But like Councilman Coleman said, it's like blanket restriction. You can't just pick and choose. And there's, protections in place for like how you can apply those laws and who they apply to. So it has to be by parcel and it has to be connected to your town comprehensive plan. And so one of the things I heard from that is, there's got to be other tools available to the town other than just doing these like really, intensive changes to zoning. And I heard that and I took that to heart. And when we first started this process, to me, I felt like, oh, this really is not the answer, but a tool that is not that the town uses. And I do like this tool. I think it's a valuable tool. I would like to see the town be able to utilize it. I would like the voters to decide on this tool. And I know that I just want to say that, like I do, and the other thing I was gonna say is I wish we had done this sooner. Like I wish we were one of the towns that had done it sooner and had a fund started, because there are things that I know, come up that we see. I think the public sees a lot, the town board members see a lot of things like, oh man, I wish maybe we could have done something about protecting that, or I wish there was a tool we could have used to preserve that, the place where I'm torn is the fact that we are on such a tight timeline, and we as town board members, and I know I'm the supervisor, I was not elected as the supervisor, but I was elected as a town board member, but we are electors of the town to represent the town. And I haven't been involved in a plan process like this that was such a short timeline. And even for me to say, if we could take another month, that means that it's not going on the ballot. And I feel like there are questions about not redoing anything, but about doing revisions in the way that we would in any other process, that I feel like if we keep to the November ballot timeline, we are not able to do. And my fear is that we would be pushing something through that is gonna have an adverse delivery, whereas if there might be some things that we could do that could mitigate that. And so I think that's where I'm at, and I think that's also one of the reasons why I still feel like very, I wouldn't say I feel neutral, but I feel very torn, because I as a representative of the whole town, when we have two different voices, it's difficult to hold both of those at the same time, because I know that there are people that really want us to push this through as fast as we can. But I also think that that might mean listening to, I'm very swayed by, when I was explaining this to everyone, all I was talking about was ag. And I had the same, we don't have a farmland protection plan that would show some of the stuff that we were explaining to the public about, oh, you could do this, you could do this. We don't have something that shows that. And that, I think, is how we would want, one of the ways we would really want to use this. So I think I just haven't had the time, we haven't had that interaction with the plan itself. So, I mean, that's just my honest, my honest where I'm at. I wish I had like a more firm idea of like what I think, but I guess what I would say is I want to see this happen in our town. And I think as long as I'm here, I'm committed to making that happen. One thing that I was thinking in terms of, since the board ourselves, we are not completely, we're not unified on how we want to move forward. I thought we could either go around again, or we could go through each of the local laws and sort of discuss what we think, if there's anything that we would want to consider.
What about a free for all?
Oh, back and forth discussion? Yeah,
Can I ask a question?
yes.
Would the town board be able to adopt a local law to create an advisory board who then can review this plan if it's not adopted and come up with changes for a new plan to be adopted prior to
One,
going back to?
one thing that we can do, is one outcome, so I know there's an outcome of moving everything forward. There's an outcome of tabling everything. We can also adopt local law G, which creates a fund and creates the advisory committee. That would not be on the ballot. That is an act the town board can do. The fund can't have any money put in it. That's all regulated by the state. This fund would just be an empty shell, basically. We would basically be using local law G as a vehicle to move something forward, but then in that, there would also be an official legislative committee that would be a new committee that the board would, it would be like, not an ad hoc committee, through a legislative act. So we could do that, and we could task that committee first with doing a revision if we wanted to. So that's one thing that we could do to answer the question.
Could donations go into that fund?
I do not believe so. My understanding is that you have to pass the plan document in order to, well, that's a good question.
Okay.
I can ask Mary Lou. I did not actually ask her that specific question. We could not spend anything out of the fund.
Okay.
Unless we had a plan document, an adopted plan.
So
Jesus, good proposal.
I was thinking if you were to have an advisory board, expand it to have more voices, and then you have that fund. And then my question was, you work on the plan, you adopt the plan prior to next year. I'm just saying hypothetical, could people make donations at that time if the
Right.
plan is adopted?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, and I did not think to. I asked Mary Lou about
I'm just
grants.
thinking as we're,
Yeah, like would it still be eligible to receive grants?
I do think there is I didn't think to ask Mary Lou that specific question. No tax dollars could go into the fund, and no real estate, there would be no real estate transfer tax going into the fund. And no expenditures could happen out of the fund. Whether someone could donate to that would be something that I could clarify.
And can you add the question? Same question and ask if grants. would
Yeah.
be, like, requested.
If I could just make a quick comment. I think one thing that we all have in common that we each brought up was communication. And our communication with our residents needs to improve. And it's a common theme, and I think pushing this forward is gonna lose more trust from our voters. And if we want this to go through, then we want them to back it as well. But I think we should definitely recognize that we all think communication seems to be lacking amongst us.
Yeah, and I was gonna say another shared concern is the housing thing. Like, I share the housing thing. The housing crisis is real, and the lack of inventory is real, and the ability for people to buy and stay here is a real concern. So I share the concern, Charlotte, that you raised. I think that everyone echoed it. And I just agree with Michael's framing that, like, I believe that some of the intent of this and like my understanding of it was to help prevent that and to help prevent displacement by giving us a tool to avoid this like hyper overdevelopment that then drives up prices. And so I just want to say that there's an agreement on that as an issue. The disagreement to me seems to be on like what the solution is and whether this would help or not. And so that's just one thing I wanted to clarify. And like one thing that I had in mind is just an example of why I was thinking that too, maybe not exactly on the housing property issue, but a lot of other issues we've heard about over density or traffic is an issue I saw at the Olive Town Board where there was a subdivision being proposed on a rural road And do you remember this? And everyone was very upset because it was on wetlands and a ton of acreage and was gonna triple the traffic on the road. And but at that point, there was nothing that the town board could do because they didn't have a tool like that. You know, the solution in that case to ease everyone's concerns that were valid concerns, it was too late. The land had been sold to a developer and there was nothing you can do about that once that happened. And so that's kind of where my head is at when I listen to this and think about this and I look at what real estate transactions have been going down here for the last 6 months to a year, what it looks like, where it's heading. To me, I was thinking, you know, what would it be like if we had some kind of a tool at our disposal to help manage that a little bit? That's all. But I appreciate the comments. It's really all.
Yeah, and when I said I was neutral earlier, I'm neutral because I like the idea of public referendums. I would not personally, if we had to vote on this in the next 2 weeks, I would not be able to vote like, yeah, let's do this. Like, I would want more time to think about this. But I do like the idea, like we could go and put it out in the election, educate people, and then if people don't like it, vote no. So I like referendums. That's where I'm at. I think, you know, the document too is interesting to me because I want to be careful, right? Because I mean, this document itself references. So when you memorialize something like this, it becomes something that people in the future are going to look at and be like, look, they said this back then, therefore it's, you know, relevant today. So I know the comprehensive plan is a different document. It's defined by statute. But when the comprehensive plan was done, and we may want to relook at that because it's old at this point, there was a lot of community involvement and a lot of sessions and people, you know, sticky notes and stuff like that. So I agree with a lot of the public comments where getting more input in a document like this and considering whether or not we want to revise this thing that will then become a document that other people reference in the future, there's value to that for me. I think it's worth taking some time to look at that. So I would support it. I would support if we want to establish that advisory board, have them take the good work that our current board has put together and then continue to revise that.
I agree with the last part of Councilman Coleman's statement. I am happy to local law G, if we're gonna parse them out and not talk bigger picture, and we're talking taking local law G out for us to actually move forward on. I'm comfortable moving forward with that and tasking them with a review of this first. I just don't think that when you boil it down to brass tacks, any issues I might have or issues that I think would come up for people of this area from this, we still don't have enough time to review this and educate the public so that they can make a well-informed vote in November about this with everything else we have on our plate. That doesn't diminish the work that this committee did in a short amount of time. Thank you guys so much for that. This is a very well put together document. But that being said, I don't, down to brass tacks, think that we have the capacity right now to do that. 2 of our board members are also going to be having to campaign this year. We're about to go into budget season. There's a lot of stuff. Our agendas just keep getting rolled over to the next. And we haven't been able to finish the zoning, so I'm for the same thing as you. I would like to see us potentially put through G tonight and then everything else be tabled.
Yeah.
Till at least next year. Is my thought process. I'm open for more, but honestly not to hold hostage, but that is the only option for me that I will vote on besides not doing anything with this until we have the proper time to review it.
Do you have a copy of G in this? Is it in this email with all of the agenda?
Oh, no, it's, that was decorated a while ago, but you can go to.
And just to be clear, the only thing driving the timeline is, so we don't have to vote on G tonight or by the audit meeting.
Correct, yeah, we can wait till the audit meeting.
We can
to
vote on
it.
G
Yeah, we don't
in
have to vote.
August.
Well, I do think
I would like to see it move forward by.
I would
the
like
same
to,
timeframe.
I think the part of it is that, you know, we had a lot of support for this, and I think being able to say commit in whatever way that we can, I think is important, because that is also like a voice of our community that came out, and I think we are aligned in so many ways with the work that was done and with the support and with the tool. So I would not want to say, oh, well, now let's just not do anything. I would want to do something. If we're gonna vote, if we're gonna adopt a law, I'd want to do it by the timeline that we said, which is next week.
I was just saying, not tonight, we don't have
Yeah,
to.
no, we
vote.
don't vote tonight. No, I was saying, the same with me in the timeframe. I wasn't saying we don't vote on it tonight. We get a vote. I'm not entertaining it whatsoever next. Because that to me, that's the only option to recover from this. And just, speaking of the sides that came in support to voice your opinions, I do just want to comment on something that happened during the public hearing, which I meant to earlier, but I had a lot of passionate things to talk about. So it skipped my mind, but there was a person from the supporting side that kept setting a timer that went off the entire meeting while someone from the opposing side was speaking. And I just find that very disrespectful and not proper, behavior during a public hearing. Everyone gets their time to speak. Supervisor Allen said at the beginning of that meeting, even though we said 3 to 5 minute time frame, that she was not going to cut anyone off. So just for the public record, I would like to state my disapproval of that behavior that happened at the public hearing also. Ariana, anyone else? I can put my soapbox away.
From my experience of sitting here, and I'm not really one to have a voice, because this is fresh for a lot of people, I think it's important to, if you're gonna create an advisory board, one, I would increase the number from 7 to at least 9 or 11. Because I think the more voices you have, the better off you are in different perspectives. And 2, I would create that advisory board and get the work started within August, September.
Yeah.
So people do have a lot of time to work on that.
I agree with Kate.
What's
on
the
the
bag
point.
piece?
Well, and
Pardon?
also I feel like you should use the committees that you have already
Well,
appointed.
guys, it's not.
Sorry.
Comment right
Sorry,
now, so.
I agree on increasing the number and moving. Yeah.
Okay, so do you guys want to take a look at local law G?
Yeah.
Create more.
I also just want to, yeah, thank you. I also just want to say that I do
You
think.
can't vote though.
Yeah, yeah, you can vote. Thank you for the help. As far as the advisory comments, any specific ones, I know that we, like I said earlier, unfortunately did not forward it to all of our committees. We actually didn't even forward it to the housing committee, as I went back and tried to ask. I told them to stay privy, and the short-term rental was the last letter I asked of them, not this one. So, but still, the housing committee was the only one that made a comment, and I think that their comments that we made for adding language, I know I'm reading some very responses and that I did send more for a lot deeper, but I do think we should take into account making it a requirement for the housing committee member on the advisory board like they suggested, but also ag would be the other suggestion I would like to add to their letter as having a required member.
Which
If we can go on. Go ahead.
there was communication with the Ag Advisory Committee.
Yes.
And again, it was the message that we do support this. However, we think there needs to be some language changed. But it was just too quick of a turnaround to get another level.
Hindsight, you don't,
Yeah.
yeah, the
So
housing
the-
committee is really fast and
So
passionate.
at our last meeting, Renee, we talked about that. We said in hindsight, we should have referred this out officially to our committees. And Renee offered to contact the Agriculture Advisory Committee and did that. And I was copied on it. There was some correspondence with the committee itself, which is an ad hoc committee. So there's no, they can do that through email. And there was a lot of input, but they weren't able to submit a comment by the deadline today. But did you want to summarize what that? It was really good feedback.
Yeah, I think kind of what I said before is that they definitely value the plan and think it's good moving forward. However, I know, or we know that the right to farm is a law, but it's not necessarily awareness of folks coming into the town. So we would just like to have a little bit more language in there supporting, the right to farm, and then also to ensure that there won't be any dictating of what a landowner does with their land if they are to sell their development rights to them. I think that was-
So just in terms of the law itself, so the language is such boards shall consist of 5 or 7 legal residents of the municipality or shall serve without compensation. So I don't know if we can go above 7 based on the law. No member of the local legislative body shall serve on the board. A majority of the members of the board shall have demonstrated experience with conservation or land preservation activities, which is interesting. That's a shall. And the municipal legislative body shall make a reasonable effort to appoint at least one active farmer to the board. So I assume that we may be able to say shall, instead of reasonable effort, we can say shall appoint one active farmer, but I don't know if we can go over 7, so we can.
Well, we can also just be really intentional in the people of need.
So one,
But we're not always gonna be the people here to be intentional.
Yeah, I think that's.
We're not, it's not always.
so that is changing that is a substantial change. You would have to reopen the public hearing for that. The other,
Sorry, for which part?
if we were to add language with having a housing, someone, the housing committees
Or
comment.
any of the ad hoc committees.
If we were to require like a liaison or have a member as per their suggestion, that would be a substantial change to the law that would require us to reopen the public hearing for that. So we also could, I think we said we weren't gonna vote on it, so I can get some more clarity about that. I think if there were any edits, we would have to, that if they weren't substantial, we just need those to be in the hands of board members 8 days before we vote. So we have we have several meetings, but our next meeting, I think there'll be 4 of us present. And then after that, I think it's just.
I know we won't always be here, but would it be an option to volunteer as a liaison with a committee to the board to, being active in agriculture and being in communication with you, or I don't know how that works.
I mean, I think there's the committee itself.
Always. That we always have that oversight with this is really what I'm looking for. Like, even if it's that we can change, we don't have to name like the housing or the ad committee. Because I know people probably think I'm the housing soapbox lady, but I'm not. I care about other things too in town. But I think if potentially change the language to our ad hoc committee, because I think those 2 are only actual ad hoc. All the rest have been done by legislative power, so they would be the only 2 that we require a liaison with or require a member. I'm not opposed to member or liaison, but whichever, but those voices need to be represented in some way and heard by this committee, whether they're a voting member or a liaison that has to give a report. Is how I feel. Or maybe we have to change it in that ad hoc committee's language. If it's too hard to try to add to this one, we can say that they have to have an appointed liaison in the ad committee and in the housing committees local law to form them, do it like the reverse way, like saying they have to have a liaison to the community preservation to voice that committee's review of what they're working on.
So. It's a 7-year term. I mean, I think what I think in terms of if we're thinking about the sustainability of the law moving into the future and not having and thinking of any change that happens if this were to pass would have to be done through local law. I think I would not, in terms of that, I would not want to name any specific committee, especially like an ad hoc committee that has like these
term,
committees
yeah,
have
I
2
see.
and 3-year terms. The way it's phrased, is, you know, an active farmer. I think having that, or if we do this, and then we would create like a resolution tasking this committee with, a plan revision, right? We could put like requirements of like how we would want that.
Oh, inclusive of, I see what you're saying.
So we could do that. It wouldn't be in this law, but we could say part of this process has to be information gather, like some sort of like feedback session with this committee or something.
I like that idea. I don't think it's a compromise. Because my whole point is I understand like the housing or ag committee is like, they're not having the final say or shouldn't be involved in the final say. I think that they're there for perspective for when they're looking at parcels to buy. For preservation, so that there can be that voice of, would this be better for housing or would it be better for agriculture or something else like that, so that we can make sure that conversation happens. For where the funds get used, but I'm not opposed to how you just presented it, Erin, where we would do it in the resolution for each task then. Like it was that.
Also that, yes,
Yeah, like if we task them with planning a town park, that's not actually an idea, I'm just saying something that came out of my mind, don't quote me fully on that. Like the housing committee, besides where it would go, wouldn't really have a say, like they shouldn't be commenting on the type of equipment or anything like that, like, so that wouldn't be a task to go to them, in my eyes, like we could refer them as we see fit.
yeah, I think
Opposed
in
to
terms
that.
of that, when it gets to that point, there are things we could do actively now where you know how we put in the ag committee what we would be tasking them with, which we need to revisit and make sure that we're following, but one of them could be, I mean, the whole reason why, like going back to a comment that you made, Renee, is initially when I first came onto the board, one of my first tasks that I gave to myself was to establish the Agriculture Advisory Committee, because I wanted to see a farmland protection plan done for our town. And we seated that committee last year. And I know that came up in discussion, but we were like, let's let the committee, you know, start work before we give them this like task. So I do think that I don't think the two things necessarily have to be done at the same time, but I think including that in our future idea of how this process would work in terms of referrals to our committees when the advisory committee is looking at acquisitions, either development rights or land acquisitions, we would definitely want to put in place, separate from what that committee is doing, that process of referral. Do you see what I'm saying? That it's not necessarily part of this law, but part of the process that we would want to make sure. And I don't know where we would want to put that, but we could put it in the committee. We could put that in the committee tasks that we do when we create committees. Do you see that? Does everyone see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I'm thinking about this legislatively, and the idea of what Charlotte was talking about is when this committee is making what the process that's outlined in this law is all these laws pass, the voters vote on the ballot. Then if the town has funds, then the committee makes recommendations to the town board when something comes up for sale or something, or an opportunity comes up. And the issue that we are discussing right now is how do we ensure that the right voices are heard in those? And I was just saying, one thing that we would want to make sure that we do, that this board care about it, we want to try to memorialize those referrals in those boards and commissions, like for ourselves, for our, do you see what I'm saying? Yeah. That's separate from the formation of the committee.
I think we need to have it in this. I think it has to be in 72.5 if we want to do that.
Referrals.
Yeah. Which is the public hearing. Like, I think if we want it to be binding on a future board, I think because that's where you're laying out the requirements of making the purchase.
Can I propose a compromise? Middle of the road that's not in 72.5 and 72.4 under the advisory board establishment. What if we were to delete the sentence that says the town board shall make a reasonable effort to appoint at least one active farmer on the board? No one react yet. And add, to the first sentence, a majority of members appointed shall have demonstrated experience with conservation, land preservation activities, or agriculture, or farm use, or, whatever specific term we want to use for it, but just adding it as another option for what they shall have, because then the majority has to consist of.
The only concern I have about that is that's language right from the
Yeah.
statute.
That's directly.
I think we mess it up.
Understood, yeah.
But what do you think about the 72.5? I mean, I think it works there. It's just, it's going to potentially require a public hearing if we want it. But if we feel like that's important, I think it's where.
Well, it's more binding in a local law than it is by resolution.
Yeah.
At the end of time.
Couldn't we? Thank you, Michael.
I mean, a new town board can, amend this, but there's a huge process that would have to go, and it would go before a public hearing, where if you just have a face on resolution, you could just speak to that sitting at the table.
Because this is authorizing a future board to make an acquisition, right? The 72.5.
It's saying that all, I think with the law, I think this is also taken directly from the statute. And that, you must have a public hearing for any, acquisition. I think.
Yeah, so that's a request. So I guess where is the authorization for to purchase property? So I agree, this is a requirement that has to happen before that, but where is that happening?
That's in the establishment of the park.
So is that where? Well, no, then I still think 72.5 is, we want to have a requirement for referral. That would seem like the right place to put it, if we want that.
I do want that. I agree with Michael. Are we opposed to just this law getting re-referred so that we can have it?
I think I would like to find out what edits we could make, if any. I think that's
that's it.
we are very, I think one other thing that I know is not necessarily like as clear, because we keep talking about what a great tool this is, what a powerful tool this is. This is a very regulatory heavy tool. one thing that we haven't talked about at all is every single acquisition is subject to permissive referendum. So it's a public hearing, but also the public can petition to get anything on the ballot. So, which I think there's just a lot of checks in this set of laws that the state has created this for. So, the laws that the state has put in place to allow us to do something like this. So, I guess I just don't feel like know exactly what we could edit in this that would still be aligned. Like, could we require, I think what I was trying to bring up is that the town board itself sets what our referral process is for laws. And we follow that. And so we create committees and then we task them with very specific referrals. And I think what I was trying to say is that this town board could just edit those separately from this so that we would put that in place. I think that's all I was sort of,
To change our referral process.
yeah. For acquisitions.
For acquisition, yeah.
So I guess that's the point I was trying to make. Whether we could codify that in this law, I am unsure, but it is a question that I could ask Mary Lou, and she said she'd be able to get back to us by tomorrow. So that if we did if nothing could be done and we wanted to just go ahead and pass this next week, we could, if there were no changes that needed to make.
I guess what do people feel? Do they want to codify them?
I
Yeah.
would potentially like it codified in the law if it's something that like absolutely can't, is that it's extremely hard for us to do in this specific type of law. I'm happy with Aaron's plan as a backup. Because like you said, all the language came directly from, so editing it, we can get a rejection on trying to add that in when we re-refer this. So as a backup, if it doesn't sound like a sound solution to codify it here, I think switching how we do our referrals for certain legislative acts is the best answer if we can for me.
And you'd want to refer to housing and ag?
Those are our only ad hoc committees.
Well, we also don't,
always.
the ECC, we haven't.
ECC.
They're not ad hoc, but they could,
Yeah, they could make up it, but yeah. Really that any of our committees that this historic.
And even our HPC.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
they
historically
need, like,
advised.
I feel like it should be required. Can we just make it that all of our boards have to comment? Because then the planning board would have to too, who we already refer to.
Well,
Right?
we can refer and give them 30 days and say.
Well, we can always refer things. I think what I'm hearing from you is we're thinking about the future, the process in the future. So I feel like where we're at with this law is for local law G, we feel like this is one way that we can move forward but at the same time, be able to have the time to look at the plan. And I think after that, the percentage, which we haven't even started talking about that, but with more time. And what I'm hearing is that I do not feel like I know how we could edit this. And I also feel I don't want to force the advisory board to have a certain, these are 7-year terms. So I'm just thinking about I don't want to not be able to find the people. If we're going to have all these shalls, I don't want to be restricted in not having an advisory board if we've made it so specific. So I think that just sort of I will put, I think I would like to know exactly what edits, we're interested in making. And then I will put that, I can, ask Mary Lou that we talked about last week. Right.
Those one alarm.
We are so good at having long conversations, you guys.
Are very good.
It's 8 o'clock.
I was gonna warn you with the time a minute ago, I'm like, I don't know what we wanna do, I don't care how long every night, but.
Well, I can give you one to talk to Mary Lou and get clarification, and then we can have a better next
Right,
meeting.
'cause this isn't rushed out tomorrow.
Yeah, now we
Yeah,
don't,
okay.
we're not, we're all agreed to not stay on the timeline, I guess that's the answer we need right now tonight, but.
Well, we would be on the timeline.
Well, I guess we still would next week, so.
Unless if there were substantial edits, we would have to hold another thing.
Well, I think discuss with Mary Lou, get her answers, and if it's within the timeline, we'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting, and if it's more substantial, then.
Yeah.
And then-
It's also possible I don't actually know how this works, but it's actually possible that we could still adopt all these local laws as this board before the end of the year. It just wouldn't be on the ballot until next year.
Oh, okay.
I'm
I
just.
don't know if that's right, but.
We could. What we're trying to say is we're making a commitment to move forward on this and to work on it in the way that we feel as the decision makers, we'd like to see that work done. But I'm just also saying it's possible that, you know, we could make. We keep talking about not knowing what will happen next year, but it's possible that we could.
That this could happen before next year,
Um,
time for the ballot.
So, but we still need to establish what we would want to add if we're gonna ask Mary. Right.
Yes, I think, well, I was hoping that if we, just in the interest, the argument I was making is, I don't want to, if we're I felt like it sounded like we were all committed to taking forward steps. And I guess I don't want to just delay local law G if we don't have to. So I guess that's I guess if we had specific edits that we were interested in, I could put those to our lawyer. She could say whether or not we could do them. If so, we could put them in place and then see what steps we would have to take at our next meeting. So that's all I was trying to suggest, is that we have something more substantial to ask her.
So. Agreed. So I agree with Charlotte. I would like to include referrals to some committees. So I think we should ask Mary Lou the question. I think at the very least, future board should have to talk to the planning board just to get their perspective. But if we want to include housing, if we want to include ag, so I think the question, I would like to ask Mary Lou, assuming that there's at least one other person who supports that. If it's just the two of us, then we don't have to.
Do I need to-
No.
Can we? Like, I think that Michael, like, you're right, that if we add it anywhere in here, it would be 72.5 that we would suggest. Adding it, public hearings prior to land acquisitions. And I would like Mary Lou to hear it. That being said, if Mary Lou comes back and is like, it's gonna be too complicated, I do still support Aaron's idea of how we refer as a backup option, because I also hear Aaron on not wanting to fully wait or delay if we're all saying that we're happy to move on, like, since there is another roundabout solution to this, we don't have to, it's not the molehill I'm gonna make hold us up, if that makes sense. But I think if it goes anywhere, it should be 27-5. Do you wanna maybe work on a wording and send it?
Yeah, I don't mind doing that. And we can also ask Mary Lou if there's a more appropriate place if we want to put a requirement for acquisition. Like maybe this section 72.5 is requirements prior to land acquisition, which includes public hearings.
Well, Mary Lou did answer the question originally in this, and her advice was that we can just set that and we don't have to put it in the law, but that doesn't answer our point if we want it to be held tight to the future, to the board that is to leave it to the board. Huh?
Set which?
Set like who to refer it to, that we can refer to whoever she said.
Which of our emails?
That,
The red one?
From 142 today. That we shall make a reasonable effort to appoint one or more members of the existing volunteer town boards and commissions. She said that, that allows us to consider it at any given time. And that the same matters might be important in the future, so that we might not need to do that, so.
That's the one from today?
Yeah, the one that has the front and back, the bottom, last like paragraph is the next page. Or her comments on the housing committee's letter.
I mean, I personally feel good passing it much. Myself.
I'm fine with that.
I'm also happy to pass it as it is. I would like to know if we can have that in restricted language, but if we don't, knowing we have the backup, I'm also comfortable with our fail-safe, but I would prefer tighter language, and if we can't get an answer tomorrow, then I'm happy to stay in touch.
Okay, I feel like I have what I need to speak with her about.
And just to be clear, because this is about appointments, so it's this section, but we're talking about referrals.
No, I'm talking. Oh, yeah, I guess so. Mary Lou was looking at appointment.
Yes.
So she might have a different opinion as it's being the review. Yeah, okay, I see.
Yes, but yes. I'm not sure that we can add that type of language in this law because that section is about having a public hearing for a land acquisition, not what happens for the legislative
hearing process.
Yeah. So I think that's where, I feel like the purpose of this legislative act is to establish the advisory board and to create the fund itself. I know we had clarified questions about that. So I'm just voicing that I think my understanding is there's not a lot that we could edit in terms of like, but I
So I guess
will,
that's really like the blanket question, like the
Yes.
picture question is, can we add a referral process to section 72.5?
yes,
Is laying
and what would that,
yeah,
that
what
would be a substantial change. So it's 8:10.
Sorry. Can we ask like the overarching question of where are the rules laid out for acquisitions made by the town board? Because I guess that's the question is like, is local law G providing authorization to the board to make one of these transactions? And if it's not, where is that happening? Is that like what law is that happening? And then 2 would be, can we have mandatory referrals? And 3 would be, if yes, where?
Okay,
That sounds like a great email you already have.
yeah.
Do you want me to write? I don't mind writing.
I didn't get the answer for that person, so I can forward that to you. But yes. What is the purpose of you asking that first question?
Just because because you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree that that section is specific to the public hearing. I want to know like where where is it laid out, like what the process is for the board? Like, advisory committee says we think you should buy this property. Is there existing municipal law or town law that has already defined that, or is there something specific to community preservation that defines that?
I was gonna suggest you look in the town board manual and see if there's a section.
Yeah.
There might be legislation on the town board. I
Okay.
mean, that's something you might be able to do tonight on your own and find out, but. definitely experience.
Yeah, the town board can purchase property. We can purchase property and land acquisition. We can purchase development rights from our current fund. It would be subject, just like there's a certain, I don't know if there's a threshold. I think there's a threshold, but it's subject to.
So I guess my question is, when the town is making any kind of acquisition under this plan, does it default to that existing law, or is there
No,
a
it's
separate
in-
law?
It's in this plan and it's in the state law that establishes.
Okay, so if we're gonna require recommendations, then that was what? So where are the rules for that? Can we make that change? And if we can make that change, where is the appropriate
Oh,
place?
you're just laying out what I laid out for why I was skeptical for making that.
Right.
I see what you're saying.
Right.
Yeah. I thought you were trying to make another.
No, I'm done.
Okay.
I ran out of water for my emotions. I'm also thirsty.
Okay. I'm just making these notes.
Sorry, you want me to draft something or you draft?
I'm just taking 2 seconds to write this. I can draft it.
Charles or Tom?
How did you sound? If you already have it written, then, well, lots of.
Okay, okay.
First, we can receive, there's a phone.
That's good.
Okay. Okay. So it's 8:15. Do we want to go ahead and just, do you want to discuss the other local laws?
OHI. I personally am not willing to push them forward at this point until we have answers on G. And as a whole, but that's just myself. Up to you guys to discuss. I think that I ranted enough about the percentage the first time when we were trying to set it. And my opinion to go down to 1% has changed. I don't think I'll change any minds at this point, so.
You next? Sounds like everybody wants to take more time. I support that.
So we've been trying to vote, but. Yes.
Okay, I think, yeah, there were things that I think came up and I wasn't sure if we wanted to discuss them ahead of thinking about some of the additional edits, or I think in terms of what we're outlining as what we think we should do moving forward is that we should create the advisory committee through local law G and fill that committee and task them with doing some of the referral and looking at not redoing the plan document, but making some changes so that then we can adopt the plan.
And get comments from the.
And then moving on from that to establishing the real estate transfer tax. I do think that it is very important to discuss a lot of the things that came up ahead of thinking about that process, I think, I think that's just for me. I think there is, the concept of this, I think for some people is like very easy to grasp. Maybe that's not the right word, but I think it's complicated enough that in terms of like what you were talking about, Charlotte, about getting the messaging out to like the entire community, I think it's like a really complicated concept to think about what the real estate transfer tax is, who it impacts, and what like portion of the sales it is, because it's like, that's one of the reasons why I like have this 14-page spreadsheet, because it's like we're talking about like, these percentages of certain things, and I think I just when we all talk about valuing this tool, I think we also all have a sensitivity to the financial impact that this could have. And I guess I just wanted to acknowledge that I think is something that also deserves a lot of time. And in terms of like the way it's, this is the part, the local law I is the part that the public is voting on, but everything, I think that is like the most immediate impact that this has is people start seeing it that February, after it passes, you start seeing it immediately on all sales. So I guess that's the first, it's the last thing that happens, but it's the thing that impacts first, I guess. So, that there was also a lot of questions that came up that I did spend the time to get answers to. And one that came up in the public hearing was I know there's a lot of concern about property coming off of tax rolls. And one comment was asking about this certain section that talks about using money from the fund to pay district taxes. So that would be ambulance, school, fire, any taxing district that, that also was like, it took a few times of back and forth with me and our lawyer for us to fully sort of like see. And that the stipulation is that's for a district where 25% of the land is owned by state and municipal government, then you can use the fund to cover those. So that is like not our town. We do have a lot of state-owned land, but we don't have any districts that are 25% state-owned land. So the fund itself would not be allowed to cover, if there were acquisitions made by the town, the fund itself would not be able to be used to cover those taxes unless it was at that point. So those would essentially be town, if the fund were used in that way, they would be town-owned properties and they would be taxed. There wouldn't be no tax on them. That would be, added back. So that was just like, I think a couple people asked us to make sure that was clear, and I thought that was interesting. But
just so you know, Erin, for the amount of people it may affect, I totaled the number of houses that were over or under triggering for last year. That would be above or below the median value. There was 103 sales on this sheet. 55 of them would have had to pay the transfer tax. 48 of them would have been below that threshold, to give you an idea of where our real estate is at. So that means half the people buying according to this, half the people in town would be trying to purchase land in town would be subjected if the seller chooses to opt in to paying this tax.
Well, no, you have to
No,
pay the
you have to
tax.
pay the tax. Yeah, yeah.
That's not optional.
No, I realize I said.
The seller to the tax, the
Yes.
tax itself is not optional.
No.
So, yeah, I thought one of the things we had sort of talked about is like different sale prices. And there's an exemption amount that's the median, and the exemption amount is true for every single, purchase. So, whether it's $1 million purchase or a $350,000 purchase, the exemption amount applies. So the tax is only on anything that's above that.
Mhm.
So, if it could be $1 above, you would be paying, hopefully no one would do that to you, but you'd be paying the percentage on a dollar. If it were, as some of these, $2 million over, that would be, that tax would be on everything that's over the median. So and we talked about what that impact would look like, and, you know, the current median, when we look at the current median, the tax on the current median would be around $2,000 for our
And that
current.
was for the 447 number that you
So
gave me before.
447 is the average median from the past 3 years. This year's median is up to 525,000. So I was just looking to think about how that's gonna change from year to year. So,
Big town.
so that's another, you know, I think when we're on a rise like that, the impacts of this is gonna have more impact on, like you were saying, Charlotte.
Yeah, it's a middle class to lower middle, lower class, the missing class that not a lot of people talk about, and then poverty line gap. I know that I wouldn't be able to. I myself would not purchase another house if I had to sell mine in a town that had this I would not stay in this town with that transfer tax me as a person personally. Having to buy my home, but like if I had to change homes. So,
Okay.
but yeah,
It sounds like we're, don't wanna keep talking about, H or I. So,
I think so. I think, yeah.
okay.
Right.
Okay,
I wouldn't say I don't want to talk about it, but I think we can not talk about it. Talk about it.
okay.
Yeah, that's same. Now that we don't have to ever talk about it.
Looks like a plan that needs to be revalued.
Okay, so then moving on to discussion item D. This was just, I did this last week, but I presented the draft zoning code that we edited. Our subdivision code, we have not made any edits to. So those drafts are, the edits that we made together are in green. And the edits that were in the proposal that went to public hearing are in red. And when we did that, we incorporated, Mary Lou's comments are incorporated, and those are in blue. So there's 3 sets of edits that are reflected in that. The only new changes that you had requested that we put in, we made some updates to the animal husbandry code. And then we deleted commercial events facilities from the code. And there was a strong push to delete gasoline filling stations, which is only done through the schedule because it's not listed anywhere. And we I felt like decided that in terms of the hotel motel, that was something that needed to have a new section of code written.
At a different.
Yes, and then because, Emily, were you here for this? Resorts are specifically mentioned in our comprehensive plan, so we cannot veto until we
Change your comprehensive.
because that would be a direct conflict. We can't have a conflict between our comp plan and our.
When was the comp plan written in 2006?
Yes.
I'll try to.
It's only like 5 years ago.
So, what I would like to do is schedule, if you guys take a look at that, if you're happy with that, let's schedule it for a public hearing next week or at our August 1st meeting, but hopefully next week. I don't know, they might put it on the agenda for us, but we have to refer that.
Oh, yeah, for if we do it next week, we could maybe get.
I'm not sure we will actually.
Yeah,
I
but for the
think-
county.
I
and
think the cutoff
town.
would be this week for that,
Probably.
because we're supposed to give 2 weeks. But I would, yeah, regardless, maybe
Within the next
they'll.
2 weeks.
You just won't be able to close it once you have your
Right.
public hearing. They get it done.
But I would really like to adopt the zoning code changes as soon as we can. We set out our process,
And the map.
that, yes, that we are waiting. We scheduled public information sessions. We set the data. I'm waiting on the local law for the map is the actual map, it's not the data. So we will be sending out letters to all property owners that were originally affected or are newly affected by the zoning changes, laying out the proposals. And we went through that in a public meeting. So that letter will be getting mailed out as soon as I have the updated parcel owner data. But we did schedule 2 public information sessions for next month to review that with the public. But as soon as we receive the map itself, which I'm waiting on, that's when we could schedule a public hearing. But before we actually receive a map, we cannot schedule a public hearing for that. So, but I feel like, I don't think there was any edits we wanted to make to subdivision. So I thought we would just schedule that at the same meeting.
I think that sounds great.
Okay, so everyone will have a chance to look over 140, make sure you're good with that, and we'll do that, schedule that public hearing next week. Okay. Total 360. I have 3 quotes for a timesheet and attendance app. So this is has nothing to do with zoning code. So we currently do a very analog version of time and attendance.
Get this with this paper.
Yeah.
Understand that.
So we currently utilize ADP for payroll, but that gets entered in, directly based off these like sheets. And we also what ADP is doing is doing the deductions, paying the deductions as we put them in, and mailing the checks. We would like to have an integrated system that logs paid time off, and that the employees could use to enter their hours in, rather than doing this like sheets of paper system. So when we got the initial quote from ADP, it met our thresholds in the procurement policy to get 3 quotes. So even though it's with a vendor that we already have a contract with, it's not for this. So we would like to, what Stephanie and I would like to do is go with ADP. But we got quotes from the different systems.
Just look at them through.
Required to get 3 quotes, prefer to go with the vendor.
Yeah.
Use all of my reports. You can have that one for. Oh, yeah, okay.
And is this like a wholesale change of systems to do this?
Yes, it's gonna take 8 weeks.
No, but I'm
So-
saying if we went like with any of these other quotes.
Oh, if we went with the other quotes, we would most likely need to switch over our payroll to them too. I mean, it would,
Does this allow to also clock in digitally?
yes.
Okay.
So it would be a desktop app. There's a phone app that, but what we would do is we want to set up the desktop app. I did not want to purchase the time clocks because they're actually very expensive and I feel like we could do the desktop, but we can. Look at that.
That's probably pretty good. Desktop. I only know this much.
I mean, we're far outdated just writing it on one piece of paper.
Yeah. Well, look, you're telling me mine's an Excel.
One-
file, like,
I think also this actually, there is gonna be onboarding for sure. But it actually is a much more transparent system that empowers employees to, really see their time in real time and not have to like request. And to do the requests from home, and then we receive notifications of them and department heads would approve time sheets. And then we would, in my office, we would review them it would be a similar process, but it would be digital. And it would automatically, the time off is automatically deducted, whereas that's not this way that we do it.
And is it like everyone has their own login to be able to clock in, so then the department heads that have to sign off on people's time sheets will have to do so themselves electronically every week like that? They have their own login to do like that'll. that's
I
like a
think
separate-
part of it is we would work that out
Yeah.
with each department.
I know that you don't have.
And how we do it, and that's one of the reasons why it takes 8 weeks. Because everything has to get synced up, we have different, all our employees are accrue different things and have different hours,
Oh,
and there's like pre-2014 and post-2018, and
No, I was just wondering for like, once it's in, like, moving, just that, because I know right now we have to have department heads sign the sheets, right, currently, or?
yes.
Yes, right,
Mhm.
and so, just to make sure that that's, I was just making sure that it's
Yeah.
like they had their own stuff, it wasn't like a
Yep.
department gets a login to clock in type of.
No,
weird thing.
it would be functionally, employees would fill out their sheet if they have a department head. Oh, there always is, but for many employees, it's also
It's
me.
yeah,
And then
that's mostly,
Yeah.
the not you is pretty much what I was
Yes.
asking, not you or Kate department heads.
the
Have
highway,
their own
yeah.
login to do the
Yeah.
approving, so that it's not something else that like gets added to you guys. which is
Right.
why.
So, I wanted to I put these as a presentation because I wanted to put this on the agenda for
the audit.
yes, or not the audit for the first, but I had them on our workshop agenda.
Yes, yeah, you said
And-
you were gonna put the carryover.
This was the carryover for that because I want to just feel, I'm gonna talk to the departments ahead of that meeting. So,
On a records management end, I think this is fantastic. If you think about it, you have to keep that record of every employee, so it's one sheet of paper, 1 week for 52 weeks. Per employee, that's here anywhere from 20 to 30 years, multiply that by 30, 40 employees, and that's how much paper.
yeah, we have boxes of payroll records everywhere.
It's crazy, right?
That's not. That's not all the.
That's a
I
criminal
just
record.
complete time, but there's either. No, that's- All right, so I guess you took a week, do you guys wanna, can we just have you put it on the audit meeting agenda so we can start it? for us to-
I would like to talk to highway and I'd like
You
to,
want some time to.
I haven't
Sure.
had a department meeting since I came in and I need to have one. So I wanted to try to have one before that and just
Okay,
like
cool.
make sure.
I wanted to, wanted it. Offer to do that. If you needed it.
Yeah, and then I have to do a budget line for this. Okay, so I think it sounds like we can, I'd like to make a motion to enter into executive session.
Are we not doing resolution process?
We're doing this before.
Ah, I forgot you said before. I make a motion to enter executive session, 8:38 PM for the discussion or of appointment for
A
a
particular,
particular person.
Second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained. So, I don't think you should. But no,
Well, I just was figured you could break that.
I will write down.
Oh.
Yep.